Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Neuroscience of Mental Health. Today, we're going to be talking about R.E.A.C.T.S in Lesson 6. R.E.A.C.T.S is an acronym for the social threats and rewards to the brain. Just like if we see a car coming at us and we have that physical threat that we might get hit by the car, and our brain turns to the limbic system, switches control to the limbic system so that we have that fight, flight, or freeze, the ability to quickly get out of the way of that oncoming car. Our brains respond the same way to social threats and rewards. So there was a study done where they put people into an fMRI machine and they hurt them physically and then they hurt them socially. And the brain responded in the same way. They also did the same experiment, but they had people take pain medication ahead of time. And the pain medication had the same effect on social pain as it did on physical pain. So it's important to understand that our brains don't distinguish, that when we feel social threat or social pain, our brains respond in the same way, just like they respond to physical threats or physical pain. So we need to understand what those social threats and rewards are. And R.E.A.C.T.S is an acronym to help you remember them. So we're going to go through each of those today. The first one is respect. Our brains like to feel like we're respected, like to feel like people are treating us well, like we're not going to be put down, made fun of, particularly around people that we're not friends with, but amongst our peers. So in the classroom, if you feel like somebody's going to make fun of you, if you feel like you're going to look stupid because you don't know an answer to something, your brain gets into that limbic system, gets into that fight, flight, or freeze, ready to escape because your brain doesn't like the idea of you being disrespected. The second one is equity. It's the idea of we want to get our fair share. We realize pretty quickly that fair is not equal. Even young kids really quickly understand that not everybody needs to have everything exactly the same. It's like, if one person has glasses, we don't feel like, well, everybody should wear glasses or everyone should have a wheelchair. We don't feel like everything has to be the same, but we have to feel like we are getting our fair share. If our brains feel like things aren't equitable, like we're not getting what we deserve, we will go into that limbic system, into that emotional brain for that fight, flight, or freeze. We're more likely to get there. Alliances will keep coming back to the idea that we are social. Humans are social creatures, and our alliances, the people with whom we have alliances, are very important to us. So if we feel like those are being threatened, whether it's alliances with our family or our friends or our workmates, our classmates, if we have an alliance and we feel like that's being threatened, we will go into our limbic system. We will respond in a way that might be fight, flight, or freeze. So we see that, I'm sure, middle school and high school are perfect times for those alliances. If you feel like your friendships are being threatened, then you are more likely to have an emotional response. Control is the idea we don't always have to feel like we are in control, but we have to feel like we have some control, and we also have to feel like things are in control. When we feel like everything's coming at us, when we feel like we're in a situation where nobody has control, people don't like being in classrooms where teachers don't have control of the situation. We like predictability. We like to know that people aren't going to make fun of us, that things are going to go the way we expect them to. So our brains like the sense of some sort of control. It's also really important to have some form of control over what's going to happen, which is why this pandemic is so incredibly difficult right now, because we don't really have much control over this. We don't know how long it's going to continue. It doesn't feel good for our brains, so we might be more likely to go into our limbic system and have those emotional responses. Territory is the idea that if we have some sort of territorial control, if we feel like this is in some way our it could be our family, our project, our kids, our whatever it is, if we have some sort of territorial feeling over something, we are more likely to have an emotional response. I use the picture of the mama bear there protecting her cubs, that if we are in that protective mode, if we feel some sort of territorial aspect, we're more likely to have an emotional response. And similarity is the degree to which we see something as relating to us or being similar to us. So the interesting part about that is this, so many of these stem from our days in tribes. And if we saw somebody who was from a different tribe, they could have been a threat. So we have this idea that if someone's similar to us, they're less likely to be a threat. But the interesting part is it can be a very small point of similarity. David DeSteno did a study where he had people either tap at the same time or tap at different times, and then he had people punish each other. And the people who tapped at the same time put significantly less hot sauce in something that the other person was going to have to drink. They've also done studies where people were supposed to be negotiating a deal, and they had them either eat the same snack, so either both sides were eating potato chips or both sides were eating brownies, or they had them eating different snacks. And people who were eating different snacks actually took much longer to negotiate the deal. So if we're sharing something, if we see somebody as similar, even in a small way, we're less likely to get emotional and protective. So it's really important to recognize that so that we can find these points of similarity to kind of calm our brain down, saying, oh yeah, we have something in common. So that was R.E.A.C.T.S, respect, equity, alliances, control, territory, and similarity. Those are the social threats and rewards to the brain. And I'm sure that you might, particularly now in in this solidarity and in being in quarantine, you might find yourself reacting more strongly than you normally would. And a lot of that might be these social threats because they compound that physical threat as well. We all have these social threats, but some of the threats are more triggers to some people than others. I know that for me, um, the idea of equity is a big trigger for me. So I tend to do a lot of the work around the house, and it doesn't have to be 50-50, but if I feel like other people aren't contributing, that's when I tend to lose my temper. So in this week, I want you to think about the triggers that are strongest for you. When do you tend to get upset? A lot of it is equity. A lot of it has to do with where you are, who you're with, but think about recognizing, oh, my brain is going, I might tend to get a little bit more upset right now because I'm feeling like things are unfair. How can you communicate with people in a way that will keep that anger from coming up, to be able to override that and say, no, I can communicate with people instead and say, hey, can you help me with this? All right, we will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.